Hello.
And welcome to Cinemarx. I'm getting an echo. Wait.
Let's see.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's fine. Oh, I'm getting an echo over there. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. Oh my god, why did I do that? I'm sorry. I am not doing well at producing today. I'm just like, I'll drag my window over here, but no, the window is important for the.
Oh, there we are.
There we are.
Yeah.
There we are. Okay. Are you getting an echo from me, or is that just a me echo?
That's just you. It was a little tinny before, but it's fine now.
Beautiful. All right. So everybody, welcome to Cinemarx. I have the lovely Kaaron here to have a discussion about Sorry to Bother You, which is a film. I don't remember when it came out. It was like
2018, I believe.
2018, yeah, pretty recently. And we both just like watched it in the past couple of minutes, no, a couple of days, and we're gonna talk about it. I think it's just a like fantastic film about, it's a very political film, which is obviously really good for us to talk about the various themes and issues and so on that go into it. Yeah. So, was there anything you wanted to say before we got started?
We spoke a little bit before about like Afro-surrealism, Afrofuturism, and what you just said makes sense. Like just by pure dint of its movement, Afro-surrealist, anything that's Afro-surrealist and Afrofuturistic is already political, just in the idea that Black bodies don't belong in like fantastical places or they don't belong in the future. Just the mere fact that this movie exists, even if it had just been Boots Riley like picking his nose and calling it Afro-surrealism, that already would have been political. But yet, and instead, he wrote a really, really beautiful script that he made into a thing. So yeah.
So I'm trying to the imagery of Boots Riley just sitting there and picking his nose.
I'm sure
I don't know.
would be.
I don't know if I would watch it, but it's definitely a captivating imagery.
Like Boots Riley would make it really interesting for you to watch. So.
I'm sure he would. I'm sure he would. Yeah. So where do we start? I guess we can sort of go with, do a brief overview of like the storyline. So it starts out. Cassius Green is like looking for a job, and he's like applying for one at a telemarketer called Regal View. And yeah, so he gets the job, and he's obviously like living in a place which is would you call it a ghetto? No, it's not.
Well, he lives in his uncle's garage.
Yeah.
And the house actually is quite nice. The fact that he's able to like get out that garage, and the neighborhood is actually not bad. I think the thing that makes the neighborhood bad is the fact that there are so many brown people in the neighborhood. That's the thing. So in that already you're looking at like what gentrification is. That the uncle is about to possibly lose his house to foreclosure because he can't pay for the thing, and then who's going to come in afterwards? He's already like introducing this idea. It's so good.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Yeah, but there's a very like from the very beginning there's a real sense that like Cassius like is in pretty serious need of money, and like is sort of struggling to. He says it a number of times. He doesn't know where he fits into the world, and it's pretty obvious that he comes from a fairly low socioeconomic status background, which is obviously why he is so interested in just getting a job, any job, to be able to pay the bills. So he has this job, and then they sort of start talking about like this sort of neoliberal garbage of like you could become a power caller, and it's sort of alluded to that this might be fake, it might not be, and then it turns out that it's real, but he's also selling slave labor and like weapons manufacturing and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
pretty morally bankrupt sort of stuff. And then there's a whole bunch of other stuff which we can get into a bit,
Yeah.
but like but like I think one of the really core things is like the way that the film satirizes this concept of like if you work hard you can get ahead in life, like the so-called American dream, or it's a mainstay of like neoliberal capitalism these days. It's like the idea that you can just work and get ahead, and that's how you can live your life, and you just have to step on people along the way and not join your union or like do that sort of stuff. You've got to keep your distance from those rabble rousers.
Well, people don't actually matter. People aren't, people don't matter. What really matters is the company. Is the company doing well? If the company is doing well and you've pulled yourself up by your bootstraps, then everything's fine, right? You're fine. Everything's fine. You're great. Even just the thing about the power, being a power caller and whether or not it's a real thing or not is in itself is actually a real thing in a lot of companies about giving you like this little nugget to look forward to. Then if you step back, you're just like, wait, what is this thing?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you'll get like the really nice sweater. And like you're like, because now you've got a thing to focus on, you want to do better for the company because you're gonna get that nice sweater. But if you step back, you're like, dude, that's just a sweater. I can knit a sweater. I don't need that.
Yeah.
Or like power color. Like, yeah, you could be a power color, but you're a power color in this company. Even before he levels up, Regal View is like all they're doing is calling people. They're selling encyclopedias in 2018. Don't nobody need an encyclopedia in 2018 if they've got a computer. So
yeah,
like this. The idea like things that matter, giving value to something that really, if you step back, has no value, it's really interesting. It's a very capitalist view, it's a very capitalist. The thing is to make money. It doesn't matter if the thing really has value. We've decided it has value, and the thing is it's gonna make money. So
yeah, there's a really good picture actually for that American Dream thing. Here. It's like the organizer Squeeze?
yes.
Yeah. The labor organizer who's like obviously like got this job to try and introduce a union. I think he's probably like the most like the person who has like the least like surrealist elements happen around him. He's like the most like quote unquote real character. Obviously the characters are very relatable, but I mean like you could very easily see like a union organizer like signing up for a job like this and going like, hey, let's build this union and try and take these companies down, and like that's and he's obviously he's done it. It's alluded to that he's done it a number of other times before. Throughout the movie, he's the most clear on the importance of like the organizational side of things. He's the most like steady voice on that side. And this scene where he's like talking about if you work hard enough as a fry cook, you can become a manager. If you spin your sign really nice, you can go to the nicer corner and spin an even nicer sign. And it's like selling you everyone can be a CEO. What's that? There's that quote of the American dream is just like people consider themselves like temporarily embarrassed millionaires or whatever.
I've never heard that. Now I want to.
I don't know who it's like attributed to, so I'm not actually sure if I should like espouse them or whatever. But it like the idea itself is I think it's a succinct way of expressing that idea that like if you work ahead, like if you do well enough, if you sell yourself well enough, if you've got the right skills and whatever, you can get ahead, and you too can become upper management, or like you can sell slave labor or whatever, and you'll be really comfortable, but you'll be morally bankrupt.
but you can with that. So, um, personally, this movie, like, it's just off topic. This movie has a lot of eye candy for me. So between Tessa Thompson and Steve Yeun, I was pretty much good to go. That's off topic. But he is the least like he is the message about like what we can do together if we as workers work together,
Yeah.
what we can actually accomplish. And I think that what he says pans out. It doesn't pan out like in the way that one would think, but I think that what he says pans out. It really they as much as the workers are seen as kind of like just background. They are actually really effective in keeping Regal View to like the only people actually able to get through, and it's through by force only are the other power callers. Everybody else, nobody else is working, so they're fairly effective, and then in the end they get what they want. So not only beautiful but smart. uh, so I have my Kwanzaa theory.
Yeah, go
If you,
on.
I think this is a good place to talk about it. So Kwanzaa just passed. Okay, it was passed like over a month ago, but still. And there are 7 principles to Kwanzaa, and I don't know that Boots Riley meant to put this in, but these are the. I'm gonna try and read my handwriting. I even put my glasses on so I could see it. So there's Ujima, which is unity, which is definitely needed when you're trying to come together. Kujichakalea, which is self-determination, which we see at various points that Cassidy starts to fail until he actually starts to use self-determination to get ahead. He doesn't actually do it. Once he's actually tries to make a change within himself, that's actually when he's able to make change around him. Ujima, collective work and responsibility, which is a huge deal here, obviously. Yeah. We're talking about unions. Ujama, cooperative economics. Nia, purpose. Oh my goodness, why can't I say that? Oh, I can say it. Imani, faith, and Kumba, which is creativity. So all of these things are necessary, which, I mean, Kwanzaa was founded on these kinds of this idea that as Black people we can get ahead if we use these kinds of these principles. And it comes around religious holidays, but it is not religious at all. It is really about like how we as a community move forward. And it says that we need unity and self-determination and collective work and responsibility to do these things. And the same messages are here. If you're trying to form a union, if you as a small person don't have money in a capitalist society, then you need to band together with someone else to make your power known. So
yeah,
that's my theory. I don't know that he put that in there, but it's my theory.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it sort of mirrors a lot of the sort of themes about like building a community and whatever. Like a lot of that is like pretty. It lends itself pretty easily to like working class consciousness anyway. So I think it makes sense that there's, even if it wasn't intentional, that there's a lot of parallels there. I think it's worth talking about like Cassius's motivations, to a certain extent, because like I kind of relate a bit to the like I don't know where my place in the world is kind of stuff. I'm sort of in a bit of that sort of kind of a place myself at the moment, and I think like I have a certain amount of sympathy for his actions, just like being somebody trying to find his place in the world. But I really like the way that the film dealt with like, yeah, he was a scab, and yeah, he broke the strike. But the way to like build the struggle is not to like have a go at him and like alienate him and like isolate him or whatever. It's to try and bring him back on board and try and like involve him in the struggle and and that actually is something that like towards the end of the film he says, I can't remember exactly, like we are doing something important, like like the struggle itself has changed how he feels about his place in the world, like, and I think that's a really important thing about like union struggles is like victories like that and even sometimes defeats can give you a sense of like where your place in the world is, who your allies are, what your strength is. And I really like the way that the shift in consciousness that he goes through from, I need to get ahead as an individual to we need to get ahead as workers, and we need to do it against the interests of the bosses. We need to fight them. Yeah, I think that's a really important message that comes through here. Yeah.
It is that in itself, in terms of story structure, it's very. He actually has a change. He even tells Tessa Thompson's Detroit, the character's name is Detroit. He tells her that he did this to be more interesting to her.
Yeah.
Because she's already interesting, and she's an artist. She's doing cool things. She wears these earrings with like these song quotes on them, and he doesn't feel like he's worthy, that he doesn't quite come up to her level, and so he does this to be more interesting to her. But the thing that she's interested in is actually the person that he is, and even though that person's still searching for who they feel they are, she's more interested in that person who is searching than the person who just grabs on to like the easy thing.
Yeah, there's an allusion in the film to the concept of like social capital, and it's pretty clear that sort of like, it's not said explicitly, but that's the sort of thing he's trying to like grasp and get a hold of. And it's one of the things that like the management staff try and sell as like, who needs wages when you can like, I don't even know. Social capital is such a like ridiculous concept to me. Like the way like the liberal media talk about it is just like, it's so like it's gross actually. Like, and it is extraordinarily individualistic. Like, the idea that you can like just become an influencer on Instagram or whatever is just, it's like hugely individual and like entirely reliant on what your ability is to sell whatever capitalist tries to get you to sell their product. It's like, that's exactly like that's the core of it. And it's like, it's really heavily contrasted in this scene here. Like, well, no, you won't get paid more, but what is money anyway? What is capital? It's like, capital is the ability to like afford rent and like food and a nice place to live.
Yeah.
Like you it's
like also the idea that you're going to get social capital from Regal View, the telemarketing company.
Yeah.
Oh, you work for Regal View? Oh my, I didn't know. Sure, let me open all the golden doors for you.
Yeah, it's like the only social capital comes inside their own little like framework that they've set up of like, you can be a power caller and you can be like rolling in the money and yeah.
But that is how our social systems work, though. Even inside our tiny little fiefdoms, you're still looking for the power inside it. Like the joke of always like, oh, the PTA moms and like the president of the PTA. Yeah, inside that little bubble, that president of the PTA is like really, really important. Or outside, that's her social capital. And because let's be honest, like 9 times out of 10, it's a woman, not a man. Because that's the way the world works. He's too busy. So she's there, and she's like, maybe she doesn't have any other capital in her life. Maybe she doesn't feel like she's worth anything else, but in that particular place, she rules. So inside Regal View, you can be like a tiny little, worker bee. But once you're a power caller, you get a suit and you get to sell bodies on the black market. So there you go.
Yeah. And the whole concept of like a power caller is like, when you see like what it actually entails is pretty atrocious. It's like, you're selling like worry-free labor, which is like it's literally slave labor. Like, the lifetime contracts, you get paid in like food and a place to sleep, and you get it looks like a lot of them are like sharing, like you share a bunk with somebody. There's like 6 people to a room or whatever. It's like, the way you get ahead in, not get ahead in life. The way you can either get ahead as an individual doing what Cassius does and like sell slave labor, or you have to be subjected to it. Like,
Well, it's like we talked about it, when the MTV Cribs version of Worry Free, when they go into the dorms and they show them like how how they're eating and how they're living. We talked about the 3 hots in a pot is also something you say about prison, but then there's also prison labor. Well, prison labor is very much like slavery. Like they barely get paid anything, and yet they're making things that we used to live in. They're supposed to be in there rehabilitating. How are they being rehabilitated when they're being used for their labor? That's it. That's it, because they're not worthy enough to be paid for their labor or to be valued for their labor. And that is how we treat them. We treat them like slaves.
yeah, absolutely. I think that the concept of worry free was definitely come up with as a way to try and not quite parody like prison slave labor, but it's just like it's such an essential part of the U.S. economy, like because they can just be like just completely underpaid and abused and forced to work 14-hour days or whatever. Hi, Mitika. We are talking about the film Sorry to Bother You and the political themes that come out of it.
I don't know if you heard, but here in New York, right near the, when the pandemic was still raging, but like last year, Homo was like, oh, we're coming out with our own hand sanitizer. Well, the hand sanitizer was made by prison labor, which of course, like people were like, wait, what? What? That's not. So that was an uproar, but it's also like a lot of things made by prison labor.
Yeah.
They do a lot of work,
Absolutely. There's like they do license plates, they do uniforms for like McDonald's and stuff. They do like all sorts of shit, and it's just it's fucking atrocious. It's like
and they pennies, literal pennies for their job. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's important that they show these workers just aren't like they're not just lying down and taking it either though. Like there's the whole Left Eye faction that is like critical and like rebelling against the worry free like style. And I think that's really important because like even if people are locked up in prisons, like obviously like we need to object to the existence of prisons, but also like you can organize resistance inside them as well. And like
I do love that they're Left Eye. I do love that they're Left Eye because as a fan of Left Eye Lopez, I am rest in peace. But in the big fan of TLC, the fact that because I looked it up, I was like, why did he choose Left Eye? As she used to wear like the little stripe under her eye, so it was definitely like an homage to her. So I looked it up, and apparently like he came out just after because Bruce Riley is also a musician. He's part of the coup. And so he came out like very soon after TLC, and he was really into them. And so not only is it like leftist, but also Left Eye Lopez. Lisa Left Eye Lopez was the homage, but I love that. So.
Yeah, there's so many like cool little like aspects and nods and all sorts of things in it. Like it's just like a really thoroughly well-made film. Like particularly like we alluded to this earlier, like the surrealism of like when Cassius is making phone calls, he just like gets plopped in front of whoever he's calling, which there's these awkward scenes of like someone's like answering their phone while having sex, and that's a bit weird. But then there's also this like really sympathetic scene where he's trying to sell like an encyclopedia to somebody, and she's like, I don't have any money, like my husband has cancer, and we're like, we're basically broke because of that, because we can't afford his medical bills, and it's just like there's these little windows into into different sort of like things that are going on in society. I think it's really
well. He plops into like very human very human times in these people's lives. You know, like you said, they're having sex and like being her, like trying to figure out like how she's going to live. And it's like capitalism poking into your very human part of your life and still expecting you to pay attention to it, you know? And he's being told, like, he's looking at this woman who's talking about how she doesn't have any money anymore and her husband's dying of cancer. And as a human speaking to another human, his first inclination is to kind of reach out. But he looks over and the company says, stick to the script.
Yeah.
And this is where we know that Cassius is not, at the moment, not the stand-up guy because he sticks to the script. So, yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think, like, we were alluding to prisons and stuff. I think it's worth talking about the way that the police are portrayed in this film, because I think it is like one of the most accurate portrayals of the police in a film that I've ever seen. Like they're not trying to be sympathetic. They're not trying to arrest the bad guys or whatever. Their entire role is they're the riot squad and they've shown up to break this strike to get the scabs into the workplace. And I've seen that. Like I've been on picket lines before here and seen one of my friends got his knee broken at a picket line because we were standing on the picket line and the pigs came over and batoned him in the knee. Yeah, so I think that's like a really it's one of the most accurate portrayals of the way the police act in that sort of situations and just their role in society. When they're not brutalizing brown people at Black Lives Matter protests or whatever. Which they end up brutalizing a bunch of people in one of the later scenes.
Yeah.
When they have that victory, including Cassius, he gets whacked in the head again.
So they just the because I looked at them again and I was like, wait, are they police or are they private? But but the police do they're more. Their job is not to protect and serve. I believe it is actually no longer part of their oath, their slogan anymore. They don't protect and serve. They very seldom actually work for the community. They are there to serve the purposes of the money.
Yeah.
So in this particular case, while you've got your the rabble rousers, whatever, the lower people on the totem pole outside, you've got to get the power brokers inside because they need to that's where the big money comes from. So they've got to get inside, and they don't care how they do it.
Yeah.
So, just that watching of especially after this past year, watching the truck, it wasn't seen, but the truck barrel through and you could hear it hitting bodies.
Yeah.
And then and watching it play out in Cash's face, of what is happening, and that it matters so much more that you protect this money, this thing that has no value unless we give it value, than to protect the lives of people who have intrinsic value. So
yeah.
I just
yeah. And that's sort of one of the contrasts of the film is to ordinary human beings and to workers, human beings have value. And Cassius is always even a little bit squeamish about selling of slave labor and stuff, even though he goes along with it. But then when it comes to the proper capitalists, what's his name? Lift, yeah. He's just well, yeah, sure, we need workers or whatever, but I want to be able to manipulate them and turn them into fucking horse people, because that's
my favorite part is that he thought the entire process out.
Yeah.
It's just not only returning these into Equisapiens, but eventually they're going to start their own societies and they're going to rebel, and that's why we need you as Martin Luther King. He had thought it out. There's going to be rebellion. How can we stop this rebellion? And it all made sense to him. This, of course. Why would you not do this?
Yeah. And he makes the allusion to MLK. He's we need an MLK on the inside to be their leader, but also be under our control. And it's a real strategy. This is obviously a very explicit version of it, but they in struggles, capitalists do try and undermine or co-opt like sections of the movement or various sorts of things, and actually like the one of the sort of conclusions of like the struggles in the 60s and 70s was that a bunch of like black people ended up in the political establishment, like under the Democrats, which advances their individual position, but the like collective position of black people still, it was advanced, but it wasn't like, there's still obviously racism obviously still exists in the U.S. society, like.
Well, it is like we talked about it a little bit before, like respectability politics, and respectability politics is still a big thing. It's about like how you get accepted into society, and in this movie, you've got, first off, I love all the names. So you've got Langston, who's played by Danny Glover, speaking to Cassius, which is like Langston Hughes and Cassius Clay. But speaking to Cassius about like how to use his white voice, not just like nasally, like Will Smith, like with a nasally voice, but someone who doesn't have a care in the world.
Yeah.
And then using that to teach him how to get ahead, which is basically teaching him how to code switch, which is what we are often taught. That's what we're taught, is how to code switch so that you can get through the world, not only get through the world, but succeed and be safe. So then once he's actually using this knowledge to get up in ranks, and he moves up as a power caller, he's then taught on a deeper level by Mr.
Blank,
who's played by Mr. Blank, who's played by Omari Hardwick, about how to move up even more. And the thing is, it's very similar to like moving up in society as a Black person. You do all the right things. You make sure you go to school. You make sure that you don't have a baby out of wedlock. Make sure that you marry the right person. You live in the right house. You speak the proper way. You make sure that people totally understand you when you're talking. Everything is it's completely done right. And if you do everything right, the world will accept you. But that is a lie. You're never safe. The world does not accept you. So why are you doing all these things to bend yourself into pretzels, to serve someone else, to get to a place that you think you want, but once you actually get there, still doesn't respect you. Cassius gets to that place and they still want to turn him into equisapien. They still want him to be a worker bee. They don't want him to get ahead. So what was the purpose of twisting yourself into this person that doesn't actually exist if you get nothing out of it?
Yeah. I mean, he does, like, obviously get a fat paycheck, but in terms of, like, he obviously loses connection to his friends and family. Like, the moral side of things is like very clearly, I think, painted on that front. It's like, you've sold out your community, you've sold out your family, you've sold out your friends, and like, you get a bit of money, but you also get treated like, hang on, there's a couple of scenes where they're at this big party, and the way that Cassius is treated at this party is just like so god awful, atrocious. It's like they just like, oh, a Black person, so he must like have been in a bunch of gang violence and busted a cap in somebody's ass. Like, this whole scene is just like, the Lift starts talking about how he put two clips of an AK into this rhino's head, and then he goes, so tell me about all the times you've like shot somebody, like, as though.
I don't think it's one of the least satirical scenes.
Yeah.
I mean, you've met me this way, but not like in person. And I've got degrees. I'm older, whatever. But still, if I walk in somewhere, people are like, there's always like a slight impression of like, I must have come up from somewhere. Yeah, I came up from being solidly middle class. What do you want? So like, I don't know what you want from me.